EFF will picket outside the Israel embassy in Pretoria in solidarity with the Palestinian people tomorrow. Former President Jacob Zuma will on Thursday return to the Pietermaritzburg High Court for arguments on the removal of Chief Prosecutor Billy Downer. Patricia de Lille will host the BRICS tourism ministers in Cape Town from the 24th to the 26th of October 2023. A very good afternoon. We're coming to you live from our studios here in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. Thank you very much for tuning in. You're watching The Week Ahead. You can interact with us on social media platforms. It's at Week Ahead, and our hashtag is The Week Ahead. I'm your host, Mfundo Mabala. Leading our bulletin this hour, the African National Congress says even though there have been reports of infighting and violence in some of their branch general meetings, the process to nominate prospective parliamentary representatives and at 9 provincial legislatures will be fair and transparent. Speaking to the SABC, the party's electoral committee secretary, that's Chief Livuani Matsila, says he's confident that the public will have confidence in the nominees.
The ANC's Electoral Committee Secretary says the infighting amongst the branches are over, and he's adamant that the process to nominate members who are going to represent the party in government will be fair and transparent.
There will be fairness and transparency in getting people onto the list. There's been sporadic incidents of violence and disruptions of BGMs. But not in this current process. We have seen that during the 2021 local government candidate selection process, and also as the build-up towards the 55th National Conference in Nasrec, there's been that report of violent meetings and disruptions of BGMs. But in this case, there's barely any intimidations or disruptions that have been reported.
Chief Matsila says they are still debating the coalition process within the ruling party.
The coalition process in the ANC is still being debated by the National Executive Committee. So the Electoral Committee really focuses on the candidate selection process to ensure that we get the best of the best to go to Parliament and the legislature. But I'm sure the NEC will make pronouncements in due course in that regard.
The ANC's Electoral Committee Secretary says the party does not want to associate itself with members who are corrupt and have criminal records, so those members will not form part of the list.
If you have a criminal record of any nature, you're also not allowed to be a representative of the ANC. So the ANC takes the issues of corruption very, very seriously, that we don't want to associate ourselves with those that have got corruption against their names, and we believe that through this process we are able to clean up the image of the ANC, and you have people who are there without questionable credentials in public.
Chief Matsila says the party has started to campaign for next year's general elections, but he says they are doing it differently this time around.
It has started in a manner that is very different from other campaigns. It's campaigning of a different nature. That's why you can't pick up that we're already campaigning.
Calvin Lutla, SABC News, Johannesburg.
The EFF will picket outside the Israel embassy in Pretoria. Now, this is in solidarity with the Palestinian people. The two Middle Eastern countries have been in conflict for years, but fighting intensified recently after Hamas launched a surprise military operation against Israel. The Israeli military then launched a counter-operation, initially targeting Hamas in the Gaza Strip, where more than 2,000 Palestinian civilians were killed. To speak more on their stance on the Middle East conflict and bids to end hostilities, we're joined now by Nazir Paulsen. He's an MP for the Economic Freedom Fighters. Mr. Paulsen, good afternoon, and thank you very much for your time. So you will be picketing, but beyond expressing unity with Palestinians, what outcome are you hoping for with the picket?
Thank you very much and good afternoon. I just want to correct one little misconception you have. There's a country called Palestine and there's an occupying entity called Israel at war with Palestinian people. But over and above what we want to accomplish tomorrow, that is our position on the Middle East war on and colonization of the Palestinian state. And we would ideally want the Israeli ambassador, the legitimate state of Israel's ambassador, to be expelled by this ANC-led government. We also want to boycott Israel, sever all diplomatic, trade and cultural relations with an illegitimate state that continues to occupy the Palestinian state.
Now, beyond this, I'm sure you've seen that whomever you engage on this particular matter, it's one that dates back many, many years. Whomever you engage, if we had an Israeli member today or one from the Palestinian side, everybody feels as though they are a victim. You are stating here that what you want is for a complete boycott of anything associated with Israel. But beyond just that point, how do they reach some sort of an understanding between these two nations? What would constitute peace in such a situation?
Once again, let me correct you. There's only one nation that live in Palestine. That's the Palestinian nation. Palestinian Jews, Palestinian Christians, Palestinian Muslims. That's what they were before the occupation 75 years ago. So Jews, Christians, Muslims, and even Druze lived side by side in the state of Palestine. It was when some Zionist movement in Europe wanted to establish their own state because they were horrible then and they remain horrible, and they with the power that the West has given them, they are able to subject the Palestinians to conditions that's even worse than what we as South Africans got to know as apartheid. That was what the Palestinians are enduring now is not just apartheid, it's a complete attempt at committing genocide upon the Palestinian people.
And that's what you actually stated in your statement, that this humanitarian crisis has reached that point of a genocide. But when you look at what's happening now, the likes of America have continued to support Israel, stated that they don't want them to run out of arms and that they have a right to defend themselves. What are your views on the position of those who perhaps are not assisting in ensuring there is peace, but rather saying that there are certain nations that must be armed to defend themselves?
The Americans are also colonizers. They've colonized that country they call America, committed genocide against the indigenous people of that country, and also the illegitimate state of Israel is the same project. They are the representatives of the West in the Middle East. The Israelis consider themselves Westerners because they are Westerners. They are not indigenous to the state of Palestine. The Zionists are not indigenous to the state of Palestine. Those who always lived in Palestine, who are Jewish, still recognize being Palestinian Jews. The Israelis are a Zionist state. That is, a political Zionism has nothing to do with Judaism. Jews, Christians, Muslims, Druze have lived side by side in the state of Palestine until a Zionist movement felt it was their right to usurp the land, commit genocide against the people of Palestine, and to occupy the Palestinian state as a state of Israel.
Then take us through the plans of the picket. Can anybody join, those who sympathize with the people of Palestine? Just tell us everything related to that.
Well, we welcome every progressive South African who feels for the humanitarian crisis that has been going on in the state of Palestine for the past 70 years. We call on all of them to join us, to show this government the disgust we have that they still entertain strong relations with an apartheid state, diplomatically, culturally, and also economically. We are one of the biggest trade partners of an illegitimate state, given our history. It is unthinkable that this has continued for 30 years. It shows the weakness of the ANC. Nelson Mandela laid a foundation. He said, South Africa will never be free until Palestine is free. But all the artisans that came that was supposed to complete our democratic project were very poor artisans. That is why you need an organization like an EFF, like the EFF, a progressive organization under the guidance of the Central Command Team and the Commander-in-Chief and President of the EFF that will take us back to 1994, where we get to rebuild the South Africa that we all dreamt of, that our parents dreamt of, that our grandparents dreamt of. We are going to at South Africa, and we will not allow any South African. There are South Africans in total contravention of the Foreign Military Assistance Act that go over to that apartheid state and go and kill and commit and join in the genocide project of the Israelis. So South Africa, the South African government has been weak. The NPA is sitting with a list of names of those who have fought in the Israeli occupying forces since 2018, and they've done nothing. This is how South Africa has failed Palestine over and over again. The EFF will not allow that situation to persist.
So, though you may not be completely satisfied with the government, you've just raised all the concerns. Are you perhaps heartened by their posture of late following that attack by Hamas? Because they were unequivocal as government stating that they continue to support the people of Palestine, even the political party, the African National Congress as well. So are you at least heartened by that particular posture?
But as I've said before, all of it is just a political ploy of the ANC, because they've exposed themselves. They've seen the prevailing sentiment of this country. It took Cyril very long to go and get the ANC NEC to come up with some sort of posture which feigns support for the Palestinian people, because if South African government really supported the Palestinian people, we would not still have to have that march tomorrow to tell the ambassador of an apartheid state that he's no longer welcome here in South Africa.
Mr. Polsa, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. That's Nazim Polsa from the Economic Freedom Fighters as they prepare for their picket in the Israeli offices. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Polsa. More news on the other side of this break. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. Former President Jacob Zuma will on Thursday return to the Pietermaritzburg High Court. This is for arguments on the removal of Chief Prosecutor Billy Downer. For a discussion on this story, we are now joined by Ritumetse Phiri, Managing Director at Youth Prudential Specialist Council. Ritumetse, good afternoon and thank you very much for your time. So the former president would this week attempt to remove Advocate Billy Downer yet again. The first attempt we all saw went all the way to the Concord. But he's back again with the same set of facts, but before a different High Court judge who's now presiding over the arms deal case. Talk us through the strategy by the former president.
Well, I think the strategy has quite clearly now, by the Supreme Court of Appeal, been called the Stalingrad strategy. And I think in the judgment that we got this week in relation to the appeal in the Corin Moore and Billy Downer case, the Supreme Court of Appeal was quite clear that, you know, the law reports are replete with many instances where Mr. Zuma has sought to delay his criminal trial through taking applications such as this one. And I think in this particular instance, we've got the benefit of not only the Pietermaritzburg High Court judgment, but also the Supreme Court of Appeal judgment, as well as Piet Koen's judgments to indicate that, whatever sort of applications that Mr. Zuma may be making, and I'm not sure on what basis he'll be bringing it this time around, other than to say that he had indicated this previously, around Mr. Downer's removal will absolutely be aimed at delaying the commencement of his trial and for no other purpose.
But now, on that Stalingrad argument, his legal team has consistently taken exception to this, particularly that claim that the president uses some sort of delay tactics by challenging each and every ruling. But his team has consistently stated that he's well within his rights as an accused person to challenge his prosecution. So where exactly do you stand on this? Because they seem to be of the view that he has that right constitutionally.
I think he certainly does have the right constitutionally, but, if you look at what the SCA said during the week, it's very clear that, for instance, in respect of the private prosecution of Karen Moore and Billy Downer, the court said it's patently a bad case. There's no ways that it can ever succeed on a balance of probability. So from the outset, it is a terrible case. So, in that particular instance, in as much as you may have the right, it's very clear that that right is being used to subvert the operation of justice and how the justice system works in this particular instance. And that actually takes away from the confidence in the courts and their ability to dispense with the rule of law. So I certainly don't believe that Mr. Zuma's legal representatives take exception from a correct point when you actually have court judgments that are quite clear that what they actually have been trying most of the time is actually without success, and certainly simply for the purposes of delay.
So judging from everything that you're saying, you're possibly of the view that there are no prospects of success here, that this matter may come before a different judge, Judge Clearly in this instance, that it will come before him, but he's likely to also not agree to have Billy Downer removed from this particular case.
I would say that because, we've had a few strategies around the removal of Billy Downer. The first was the special plea that Mr. Zuma raised when it was time for him to plead to the merits of the case. That was aimed purely at bringing a halt to his prosecution. That was then followed by this application that was brought on the back of the private prosecution that Mr. Zuma brought. That's now fallen out of the equation, and it's very clear that even if he actually appeals that all the way to the Constitutional Court, that will not be successful. The Supreme Court of Appeal was quite clear around setting that out. Now, the question is, what other basis would there be to bring an application to remove Billy Downer? I don't see a credible basis now that you've dispensed with those two pillars. So I'm not sure if there is a credible basis to bring an application to remove Billy Downer. And certainly I would say that, Judge Lilly would see it the same. But obviously we have to see what Mr. Zuma has to argue in support of that application.
But are we likely to see here, if that particular matter is dismissed, are we then likely to see the same routine where there's going to be an application brought for leave to appeal before the High Court, and from there on it possibly goes to the SCA and then the Concourt, as we've seen?
I think we're likely to see that, but I like what Billy Downer and Karen Moore did, because the moment that Mr. Zuma was not successful and he indicated that he would bring an appeal, they brought an application in terms of the Supreme Court Act, which would basically reverse the operation of an appeal. So usually when an appeal is noted, you can't execute on that appeal, which means that Mr. Zuma would have had the ability to continue to prosecute Billy Downer and Karen Moore, even though the matter would have been going through the higher courts. But what the court has done is actually stopped the operation of that judgment, which means that everything goes back to the situation as it was before this private prosecution. And I think that's a neat little trick that we'd probably see being employed going forward to the extent that Mr. Zuma would want to continue with these appeals, because in that way, then he doesn't get the benefit of abusing the criminal justice system while he ventilates his appeals.
But one thing that becomes certain is that the arms deal will not resume, the arms deal trial will not resume then timeously in this instance. So where would we place it? Do we think that perhaps it would be sometime next year, or how long could all these appeals now take?
Well, it's very difficult because we still haven't actually seen that application that Mr. Zuma will bring on Thursday. So, you know, I would hope that his legal representatives, with the outcomes in the Pietermaritzburg High Court and the Supreme Court of Appeal, would look at this thing holistically, including where it started with Judge Kuhn, and be, you know, and understand and accept that there really is no basis to continue with an application to remove Billy Downer as a prosecutor of the trial. You know, so in the ordinary course, that's what would happen, and hopefully we would get along with this application. What the parties would talk about on Thursday would be how we go along with this application. With the trial. But now, obviously, we do have the complicating factor that we don't know what exactly, on what basis Mr. Zuma will bring his next application to remove Billy Downer. But certainly, you know, whichever way he tries, I would hope that this can be dealt with summarily. I'm not sure where we're going to go, given we're not sure exactly what he's going to say. But you would hope that given the volume and the benefit of these court judgments that we have, the parties and the judge would seek to ensure that this is dealt with in a manner where we can, proceed with that trial very quickly.
Or perhaps they could have new facts that they'll present to the judge. But Ritumetse, thank you very much for your time as always. That was Ritumetse Phiri, Managing Director of Youth Prudential Specialist. To the story now, Operation Dudula is holding its first National General Assembly in Diepkloof, Soweto. Its President Zandile Dabula is speaking. Let's take you live now.
Operation Dudula is going to contest in the 3,750 of 4,470 wards in this country. And we are going to contest on the 18,730 of the 23,000 voting districts. We are going to make sure that we have voting agents in each and every district in this country. Commander Morning. Now that was just a confirmation, Uguti. We are going to contest in all 9 provinces. Asji. Sekude move manje. Mele sitabele phambili. Commanders morning. Commanders morning. Now, amanye political parties baneindlela zabo zokuyibiza lento engizoyipresenta manje. But the Operation Dudula has its own and non-negotiables. As negotiating manje la. Now we call them our critical tenants. Amanye political parties bawabiza ama-pillars, ama-policies wow. Now the first one we're going to talk about is the economy of this country. Now let me just make sure that we're all on the same page. Now that we have the main media stream in the house, Operation Dudula is not a xenophobic group. We are not vigilantes. We are a peaceful movement, actually. But we refuse. Maybe we militant bejo benza ngathi babone ngathi sama vigilante. We refuse to share the little that we have with foreign nationals. We refuse. We refuse to share it with corrupt politicians. We refuse. Officials are already looting South Africans money. It's sad. But zizochilizim. Now this is why we say, as the Operation Dudula, South Africa belongs to South Africans and not visitors. Now under Operation Dudula, no foreign national will trade in this country. Hold on. They are not going to trade in this country if they do not follow the laws. They need to invest, these people. There's a stipulated amount of money that needs to be invested for you to be running a business. Now, if you are not willing to do that as a foreign national, whether you're legal or illegal, asinanda, we don't compromise. Now it means that we are going to clean the streets. Sizozicleana late right. Sesiqalile ngithi ngephazi. And akuphelele ephazeni. Sizozicleana and we are going to make sure that they are owned by South Africans. There will be no counterfeit goods or expired goods in those shelves. We are going to make sure, because we are going to hold them accountable. And we are going to make sure that they are going to be charged with attempted murder if we find any expired goods in your shelves. But that's only after sesibatlini la ngithi ama-foreigner aphume ebasing zethu. We have our commanders who are running tuck shops. Their businesses are suffering. The competition is way too high for them. But we are going to correct that. Now, the Operation Dudula is going to save the state-owned enterprises. You know, instead of deploying our family members to our friends, we're going to deploy people who have capacity and the skill. Commanders, morning. Now, Operation Dudula is also aware of the high cost of living. South Africans are battling. This is a result of corruption. It's corruption, it's unstable supply of electricity, and the absence of law and order in this country. That's why people of this country are suffering this much. Now we listen to businesses when they talk, they are heart full of this country. And you know, the government services is on its knees. They can't cope anymore. That's why I said earlier that it is not possible that they can make a U-turn and correct what they have done in this country. Now, Operation Dudula has a special request to business people. We might not know what you guys are going through because mhlawumbe asikho kuleso space and your businesses are suffering. And we know that if you guys don't trust the government, we know that there's a problem. If business people does not have faith in government, there's a big problem. And we know that we are bound to fail as a country. We understand that the low business confidence means unhealthy investment environment. But we really need these business people, Sabadini. We all know how bad it is to lose a job. I've experienced it once. And some of us who are in this hall who are unemployed, they know how it feels to lose a job. But we are asking the business people to please do not withdraw. The Operation Dudula is going to try hard to fix all the issues that are affecting your businesses in this country. Commanders, morning. Now we promise that we are going to save the little that's left in this country. And we promise that we would still march. Akusho ukuthi manje sithi seParliament asaya estradini. Siphila khona kula siphila khona thina. But we are always going to have our peaceful marches. Sisazokokota kulama department. It doesn't end here. Now the promise that we can make is that in the absence of the law enforcement agencies, we will put our lives on the line to stop all criminal activities. Mangabe siyahamba siyovala amakula, sizoyenza shorti, ukuthi akunamuntu ozolutha lapha. Akuna infrastructure ezomoshwa. We're going to make sure that they pack their bags and go. And this will still do with our communities. I need to understand Abanye, Abaiko as brave as we are. But they are still Operation Dudula. We have a lot of Operation Dudula members who are at home. But we are for South Africans. Now the second one is housing. No undocumented foreign national is going to own an RDP house. Never, never. And no South African.
All right, those are live visuals from Operation Dudula's gathering taking place in Soweto, where they have confirmed that they'll be contesting the upcoming 2024 general elections. Their president, as you see her there, Zandile Dabula, also moving to correct the narrative that they are vigilantes. She says they just refuse to share the country's limited resources with outsiders, as she has put it. Well, that particular address continues. Our reporters on the ground and will bring us the very latest. But let's shift our focus now to this story. The ANC in KwaZulu-Natal says former President Jacob Zuma will lead its campaign ahead of next year's general election. Zuma addressed a mini rally in Mandeni, north of Durban, yesterday.
While some media reports had indicated that the ANC leadership in KwaZulu-Natal planned to approach former President Jacob Zuma to assist the party to gain support for the election, it remained unclear whether Zuma had agreed to their request. Since his incarceration in 2021, the former president has kept a low profile, mostly seen when he appears in court. Saturday's rally in Mandeni, north of Durban, was one of the first ANC engagements that Zuma has attended recently. Provincial leaders have confirmed that they wanted Zuma to lead their election campaign. The party has been losing ground even in its strongholds. Results of recent by-elections in some wards have shown a slight decline for the ANC's support. He says he doesn't want to talk about the state of the ANC, but people must do the right thing and vote for the ANC so that the ANC can help to change the lives of the poor.
Ukuze ANC size ekushintsheni impilo zabantu abahluphekile zibe ngcono.
Zuma says divisions are widening in the party and trust in the ANC has been lost. However, he urged those who are disgruntled with the current state of the organization and the country not to turn their backs on the ANC. He said members have a duty to challenge leaders who are leading the party astray.
Ungathi mawuhlushwa umuntu kwe-ANC noma umholi noma abantu ubusulwa ne-ANC.
He says that if you are angry with a leader or a member of the ANC, don't hold that against the ANC. If somebody has done wrong, call them out. We need people who are forthright and honest, who will not fear anyone.
Nabantu abesabayo, nabantu asebenonkosana babathembayo ukudlula uNkulunkulu.
In the 2019 national election, the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal obtained 54.22% of the vote. Despite the challenges the party is confronted with, its leaders remain optimistic. They are on course for a decisive win. Ayanda Mhlongo, SABC News, Mandeni.
The Independent Electoral Commission in KwaZulu-Natal is on a door-to-door registration drive targeting areas that were affected by the redetermination of voting district boundaries. Affected voters will have to re-register to vote in next year's general election. Now, this follows boundary changes by the municipal demarcation boards earlier this year.
Residents in over 700 voting districts in the province could have to re-register or update their information with IEC in order to vote in next year's general election. The IEC says KwaZulu-Natal has been the most affected by the re-demarcation process. It says it wants to ensure that boundaries correspond with voting districts on the ground for voters.
Of those are affected by ward boundary changes, and because once your ward boundary change, your voting district changes as well, and we have to align our voting districts accordingly. So most of those people are affected as a result of the change of a ward boundary, but there's also quite a few new housing settlements that have come up in those areas, and we now have to review our network of voting stations to improve voter access to voting stations.
The drive has seen IEC field workers conducting home visits to help voters to re-register or check whether they are registered in their correct voting districts. He says the IEC staff checked his information. He says they found out that he's a registered voter in Gauteng. However, he's now based in KwaZulu-Natal. He says the IEC officials were able to update his information.
I'm so thankful that IEC officials came to my house to update my information. As an older person, it was going to be difficult to go to my voting station to update my information on the voter's roll.
The IEC in the province says it will hold the first voter registration weekend for the upcoming general election in mid-November. It's also urging eligible voters to SMS their identity numbers to 32810 to confirm their names on the voters' roll and to confirm the voting station they are registered at. Vusi Kumalo, SABC News, Durban.
Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. Patricia de Lille will host the BRICS Tourism Ministers in Cape Town. This is from the 24th to the 26th of October 2023. The purpose of the meeting is for ministers to exchange information and experiences, as well as deepening cooperation among BRICS members to reach consensus on key priorities for a balanced tourism recovery. At previous BRICS summits, leaders acknowledged, among others, the urgent need for the tourism industry's recovery and the importance of increasing intra-BRICS tourism for a more resilient, sustainable and inclusive sector under the theme Sustainable and Inclusive Tourism Recovery. The sector was also dealt a blow by the COVID-19 pandemic and is still recovering. The department says to secure the future of travel and tourism, along with the businesses and communities that it sustains, the sector must prepare for future crises and manage ongoing challenges. Several communities and civic organizations under the Waterberg district in Limpopo say they're intensifying the battle against livestock theft. For many years, subsistence and commercial stock farmers have been grappling with soaring levels of livestock theft. Hundreds of farmers, police and community policing forums gathered at Eitzig village outside Lipalale to consolidate their fight against stock theft.
Livestock farming has been an economic mainstay for the largely impoverished villages under Waterberg. But for years, livestock theft has been a serious impediment to progress. According to farmers, stock theft has been on the rise since 2019. Over the years, reports of kidnapping and torturing of stock farmers by criminals have also emerged. Some farmers have had all their animals stolen while grazing out in the field. Farmers say their stolen animals are sold in black markets in Polokwane and Mokopane. Commercial farmers say through their cooperation with police, they have managed to minimize the scourge
I must say currently the crime around the farms are not as much as what it used to be. We are working together with Waterbuck Safety Forum and Mr. Bambu, and we've got our own farmers union that we do our safety in cooperation with Substolver. So we're grateful for the support that we get from the surrounding areas, and luckily for this time of the year, it's still quiet.
Civic organization Waterbuck Safety Forum says it's stepping up the battle against crime ahead of the festive season.
Most of the cases, like the subs members, they start their operation like December, because we know, like as we are the field man services for 247, we started 2 months ahead. We are going to make a plan for the operations for December, but we started from now onwards. We are going to make the plans for the operations, the shopping complex, the villages. We are people that are going to get the different roadblocks on the way.
Police have also praised farmers and community police forums for their collaboration in the fight against crime. Rendani Ralipasha, SABC News 8 Star.
To this story now, South Africa has been facing a challenge of people who are building houses on wetlands. This leads to water pollution in dams, rivers and other water streams. It also causes mold to form on the walls of the houses and puts them at risk of collapse. Environmental scientists have warned of an environmental catastrophe if people continue to occupy wetlands.
Most people who have built their houses on wetlands are already feeling the effects. Molds can be seen on the walls, and their houses are at risk of collapse. The yards are also wet and attract mosquitoes and other parasites. The 2.4% of the South African land is covered by wetlands, and almost half of that land has been occupied over the years. Environmental scientists say buildings on wetlands also affect the ecosystem and the animals living on such land. He says the Mother Nature will also fight back against those living on wetlands.
Wetlands are a very critical component of the natural environment. They are an ecosystem that is responsible for cleaning water, whether we're talking about polluted water going into the streams and rivers. Wetlands are responsible for cleaning that. They also clean air through what we call carbon sink. They are also very critical ecosystem for animals. And generally, from a biodiversity point of view, wetland ecosystems have got a diverse of plant and animal species that live in wetlands themselves.
Dr. Museche also says that it is the responsibility of everyone to protect and preserve the wetlands.
Unfortunately, like any other environment component, when we impact the environment, at some point the environment would fight back. If we build infrastructure inside wetlands, one way or the other, when it rains and when there is a lot of water in wetlands, our houses and roads starts to be affected as well. You will see houses with mold all over the house, showing that there is water that is seeping from underground into their houses. From a health point of view, you do not need mold in a house. Roads are destroyed almost on a regular basis. You will see certain areas where roads are peeling off because of water.
Community members say they started realizing the effects of building on wetlands after they had already occupied and built houses.
Okay, the challenges which we are facing around our area is that most of the time when it's raining, or when when it's raining, we are facing the challenges of the cracks in our houses. Even sometimes we find that some of the waters are passing through our foundations. So our lives are always in danger due to these wetlands, because sometimes you might find that our houses are also facing the cracks due to these wetlands. So sleeping is just a risk each and every time. Not knowing what might happen to our constructions or our houses.
To stay at the wetland is very much dangerous, because when you build your house, it can be fall or wet. And it is dangerous for the people who are staying there. They can be affected by malaria. So it's very much dangerous for the people if they are staying at the wetland.
With the change of weather patterns and intense global warming, building houses on wetlands can lead to environmental disaster and flooding. I'm Vutivi Maluleke, SABC News, Thohoyandou.
Aerobiologists at the Northwest University in Potchefstroom say the spring season has become increasingly uncomfortable for people who suffer from allergies and hay fever. This as pollen from alien plants that are often under climatic stress constantly release high amounts of pollen at short intervals. Experts say with this pollen mixes with grass pollen and spores of fungi, this results in a potent cocktail of allergic discomfort. Sintleng Lehehe and Jabua Africa compiled the following report.
Spring, a season of rebirth and vibrant colors, but this also comes with some disadvantages.
Whenever spring sprang, like my nose is runny, my eyes become very watery. Yeah.
When it comes to allergies, I feel like people are not well informed because allergies, in understanding, allergies is just how your body acts with the nature's livelihood.
With this in mind, aerobiologists at the Northwest University are invested in groundbreaking research around allergy-causing pollen spores in the atmosphere.
My research, basically I'm studying the pollen and fungal spores in Potchefstroom, something that has never been done. It's the first time we're doing it in the Northwest Province. So we want to study these things to better understand how they affect human health. So people who are exposed to like pollen and fungal spores can get allergies like itchy eyes, you sneeze, and some people even get like skin reactions, and it can make asthma worse for those people as well. So we want to understand how much of it is in the air, what kind, so that we can work together with public health to see how we can help these patients alleviate their symptoms.
This research also requires both technical acumen and discipline.
So this is a spore trap. It's a bit technical, but then there's like a tape, it's an impactor type. So all the pollen and the spores that are in the air, they get impacted onto a tape that is in this instrument. I take this tape, cut it up into 7 pieces because it's a weekly study. We study it on a weekly basis, cut it up into 7 pieces representing the 7 days, and study it under a microscope because we can't actually see most of this pollen and these spores.
Subject Chair for Geology and Soil Sciences at the university, Professor Frank Newman, says their research is also aimed at influencing policies around public health and urban and regional planning.
It's not the indigenous trees which are causing a problem, but the majority of the pollen we find, majority of the tree pollen are actually exotics. And if you look around here on campus, you see a lot of exotics. That, for example, is a London plane tree up there, which is releasing from August onwards throughout September until October. It releases a huge amount of very highly allergenic pollen. So by planting all those exotics, we are actually having a problem, especially in the cities, when you think about alleys, for example, that we are putting a lot of people under a health risk.
Research here also contributes to national pollen sampling. Sintleng Lehehe, SABC News, Potchefstroom.
We'd definitely love to lift it for the 4th time, but whatever happens, we're most certainly proud of the boys. They've done us so well, they've come this far. So it's good luck from us, and that's where we leave it for today. Enjoy your day further.